In this session, we will head into the Azure portal and explore how to enforce Azure policies on resources to maintain control, compliance, and consistency. To access Azure policy, simply type policy in the Azure portal search bar and select the policy service from the results. Once you land on the policy overview blade, this is your central dashboard for managing and tracking policy compliance across your Azure environment. Let's walk through what you're looking at. At the top, you'll see a scope field. In your case, it's set to Azure-Demo-1. This means you're viewing policy compliance only for that specific subscription. You can change this to a different scope, management group, subscription, or resource group if needed. Overall resource compliance is the big picture view. Here, Azure tells you what percentage of resources are compliant based on the policy assignments in this scope. In compliance breakdown, you get a visual and numeric summary of compliant versus non-compliant resources, non-compliant initiatives, and non-compliant policies. This helps you instantly identify risks and focus on what needs fixing. Below that, you'll see a detailed list of current policy or initiative assignments. Each row gives you name of the assignment, scope it's applied to, compliant state, resource compliance, non-compliant resources and policies related to that assignment. This lets you drill down into the issues and start remediation. Assignments by compliance bar chart gives you a time-based view of how your compliance is trending. You can track how your policy assignments performed in terms of compliance over the past week, handy for spotting patterns or sudden changes. Let's expand the authoring menu on the left-hand side now. Authoring menu gives you the tools to define and control policies from scratch. You will find three key options. Definitions is where you create new policy definitions or view existing ones. You use this to write the logic that checks for conditions like enforcing tags, regions, SKUs, or storage types, and specify what should happen, such as deny, audit, append. Use this when you want to customize governance to fit your organization's needs. Once you've defined your policy, assignments is where you apply it to a specific scope, like a subscription or resource group. Here you'll choose a definition or initiative, set parameters, define the scope, configure exemptions if needed. This is how you enforce policies on your Azure environment. Sometimes, not all resources can or should follow a policy. This option lets you exclude certain resources from evaluation, temporarily or permanently, while still keeping the rest of your environment governed. You can use this for testing, legacy systems, or special cases. Let's click on the definition menu option now. When you open the Definitions tab under the Authoring section in Azure Policy, you land on this powerful screen. This is where you can see all the available policy definitions and initiatives, both built-in and custom. At the top, you'll notice two important buttons. Policy definition. Click this when you want to create a custom policy from scratch. This gives you full control over conditions, parameters, and effects. Initiative definition. Use this when you want to group multiple policies into one package, perfect for enforcing a standard like ISO, CIS, or NIST. Creating custom definitions gives you flexibility, but it also requires a clear understanding of JSON structure and governance requirements. You don't have to start from zero. Scroll through this list and you'll find hundreds of built-in policy definitions and initiatives provided by Microsoft. These are ready to use and cover a wide range of categories like regulatory compliance like ISO, CIS, NIST, security center recommendations, monitoring via Azure Monitor, guest configuration options. Each entry shows name of the policy or initiative, latest version, how many individual policies it includes, type usually built in, category it belongs to, like security, compliance, monitoring. If you're new, start by exploring the built-in definitions. They cover most common governance and compliance needs. When you're ready, create your own policy or initiative definitions to enforce organization-specific rules. Use the filter options at the top by type, category, scope to narrow down what's relevant to your environment. This screen is your library of policy possibilities. You're free to use Microsoft's built-in definitions or create your own from scratch, depending on your governance strategy. Either way, this is where policy enforcement begins. Let's go ahead and search for built-in policy definition called allowed locations and apply to the subscription. You are viewing three built-in policy definitions related to allowed locations. We are interested at the second one in the list as we are planning to apply at the subscription scope. Simply click on that allowed location policy definition. You are now viewing the details of a built-in policy definition called allowed locations. This screen gives you everything you need to understand what the policy does, how it works, and how you can use it. At the top, you will find a summary of the policy. You can also assign the policy, edit, or duplicate it from the top menu. Let's click on Assign Policy. On this screen, we are in the process of assigning the allowed locations policy. This is where we tell Azure where the policy should apply and whether it should be enforced. The scope field is one of the most important steps. Here, you are defining which subscription, management group, or resource group the policy should govern. In your case, I have selected Azure Demo 1 subscription. Always double check the scope before proceeding. The wrong scope might enforce the policy where it's not intended or miss areas that actually need it. You will notice a switch for policy enforcement. When enabled, which is default, Azure will block any actions that violate the policy. When disabled, the policy still runs, but only for auditing. It won't stop anyone from deploying non-compliant resources. Use audit mode if you're testing the policy first or want visibility without disruption. Fields like exclusions, resource selectors, overrides, description can be left as they are unless you have specific customization needs. You're good to go by just setting the scope and enforcement mode correctly. Let's click on the next now. Allowed location policy requires you to select which Azure regions are allowed for resource deployment within the defined scope. I am currently selecting Australia East, Australia Southeast. That means once the policy is assigned, users will only be able to deploy resources into these two regions. Any attempt to deploy outside of them, like into East US or West Europe, will be denied, assuming policy enforcement is enabled. Use remediation when you want Azure to automatically bring existing resources into compliance, especially if your policy uses effects like deploy if not exists, modify. This is helpful when you want to enforce a tagging standard. You need to deploy monitoring agents to VMs. You are applying policies to resources that already exist. Without remediation, your policy will only apply to new resources created after the policy is assigned. Enabling remediation means Azure will make changes to your existing infrastructure, which can override configurations, add or modify resources, impact performance or availability if not carefully tested. To perform these actions, Azure uses a managed identity, which needs the right role permissions to act on your behalf. If the policy is not well scoped or tested, you could end up affecting production resources unintentionally, causing configuration drift or errors. Always test policies in audit mode first. Only use remediation on targeted scopes, not entire subscriptions unless you're sure. Review what changes the policy will apply. Assign a managed identity with least privilege required. Remediation is powerful, but with great power comes great responsibility. Use it when you need Azure to help enforce standards at scale, but always test first and proceed with caution. In my professional life, I have always avoided remediation through policy as actually break the way you do. Infrastructure as a code. Let's click next. You're now on the non-compliance messages tab. This is where you can write a custom message that will be displayed when a resource violates your policy. Let's say someone on your team tries to deploy a resource in a region you didn't allow. This message gives them context. Instead of just getting a generic denied by policy error, they'll see your custom message explaining why the deployment was blocked, what the policy is enforcing, how to fix the issue. In the non-compliance message field, enter something clear and actionable like deployment failed. Only Australia East and Australia Southeast are allowed locations per your team's compliance policy. Always provide a helpful message. This reduces frustration for your teammates and improves governance transparency. Once you add the message, you are ready to hit review plus create and finalize the policy assignment. If everything looks correct, go ahead and click Create to assign the policy. This is how you start enforcing real governance in your Azure environment. Now, if you head over to the Assignments menu under the Authoring section, you'll see the Allowed Locations policy listed there, assigned to the Azure Demo 1 subscription. This confirms that your policy assignment was successful. Whether you're assigning one policy or 100, the process remains the same. Here's what you now know. Some policies require parameters like regions or tag names, and others don't. You may need to define exemptions or include custom non-compliance messages depending on your scenario. You can choose from a wide range of built-in policies which are ready to use without modification. And when needed, you can create custom policies tailored to your organization's specific governance needs. You now have the skills to assign policies, define compliance rules, and scale governance across your Azure environment. Go ahead and start managing policies with confidence.